How's it going? My name is Trey, and my friends Brooklyn, Jamie, and I are going to help us kick off a brand new series called Close. But let me start with a question. Do we have any campfire fans in the room? What do you love most about campfires?
I love sitting around a warm fire with friends, telling stories, talking for hours, maybe singing a song or two.
I love the crackling sounds they make and the way they smell.
And I really love s'mores. I mean, I'm talking like the ooey gooey goodness of s'mores is hands down my favorite part of the entire campfire experience. By the way, instead of boring old chocolate, have you ever made a s'more with a peanut butter cup? Wow, it is an absolute must.
There is a lot to love about campfires, but we haven't mentioned my favorite thing about campfires yet. They're warm. Especially on a chilly night, it's so nice to gather around a big, cozy campfire with friends and family.
So let me ask you a question. If you've ever huddled close to a campfire on a chilly night, it's warm and bright and comforting, right? But if you take a few steps back, what happens?
That's right. It gets cold. It gets dark. You might start to trip on things or step on gross bugs. Maybe it even gets a little scary. The farther you move from the fire, the less you feel its warmth, or see its light, or experience its cozy comfort. And it's pretty hard to make a good s'more from 10 feet away.
When I think about God, I like to imagine that God is kind of like a campfire. God is the source of warmth and light in the midst of darkness. God's presence is welcoming and inviting. And we can't forget the s'mores. You know those are God-inspired. Maybe you've had times when you felt really close to God. When we feel close to Him, it's easy for us to talk to Him. It's easy for us to trust that He is there. It's easy for us to believe that He loves us and likes us and wants to be involved in our lives.
But we don't always feel close to God, do we? It's not always easy to feel His warmth or His light or His inviting welcome, is it? Sometimes it feels like God is far away, and we wonder if He's listening. We wonder if He cares. Maybe we wonder if He's even real at all. Sometimes when we don't feel close to God, we start to think, maybe God's left us.
Growing up, I went to church with my grandpa. It was a nice church. People smiled, they told good stories, and they always had snacks. I liked learning about God until middle school, when the feelings I had walking into church shifted from feeling warm and loving to cold and judgy. The time between visits got further and further apart because I wasn't really sure who God was, and I didn't like how I felt in a group of kids who seemed to know a lot more about Him than me. I don't think the people changed. I think I did. I didn't know if God could love me, my family, or my situation. I was afraid of the God of the stories because my story seemed so messed up compared to the good things I kept hearing at church. So I did everything I could to avoid places where I would feel those fears.
Does God ever leave us? Does He walk away? When you feel far away from God, how do you get close again? Or if you're not sure you've ever experienced what it's like to be close to God, how do you find your way into His warmth, light, and presence? I think the best place to look for this answer is in the Bible, specifically a book called James. Now, the book of James was a letter written by a guy named, you guessed it, James. And it was written to a group of Christians a couple thousand years ago. Now, that's a long time ago, but here's the cool thing about this book. Even though it's really old, it's full of things we can still relate to today.
Now, originally, James wrote this letter to a group of Christians who were raised Jewish. And if you know anything about Jewish culture, you know that the Jewish people wanted to know God. Like their parents and their whole communities raised them to have a great desire to be close to God. They memorized tons of scripture, and they had a lot of religious traditions that helped them worship and follow God. But when those Jewish people began following Jesus, they stopped performing many of their old Jewish traditions.
As Christians, they weren't always sure how to connect with God anymore. Without the traditions and rituals they had followed when they were Jewish, they probably felt a little distant from God sometimes. They were probably wondering, how do I worship God now? What do I do to get close to Him? Are there steps or formulas or rituals or special words I need to say? Now listen to what James said to them. According to James, being close to God is pretty simple. Come close to God, and he will come close to you.
What James says is so simple. Do you want to feel close to God? Then move. Come close to God, and he will come close to you. It's like the campfire, isn't it? When you're standing close to the fire, you feel its warmth and you see its light. And as you get farther and farther and farther from the fire, you can't feel it or see it quite as well. You get cold. It gets dark. You trip over things. It's a little scary. Maybe you get frustrated with the fire. Maybe you're confused about why you can't feel it or see it anymore. Maybe you get so far away that you start to wonder if the fire ever existed at all.
But here's the thing. Did the fire ever move? Of course not. It's us who moved away. And if we want to get close to God, James says that the only thing we need to do is to move close. It's up to us to move towards the campfire. God is inviting you to come closer. Like, you don't have to be perfect. You don't have to have the whole God thing figured out. Just move closer. Just take steps towards God, and he will be there. He's never left. He isn't like the person who promises to come to your baseball game or your school play or your birthday party and then forgets to show up or calls in sick. No, he loves you. He wants to be close to you, and he's waiting to welcome you.
So if you want to be closer to God, just make a move. You will find him because he never went anywhere. Step towards the campfire that's been there all along. Romans 8:39 tells us nothing is able to separate us from the love of God. God is with you no matter how far away he might seem in your life right now. No matter what you have done, you cannot separate yourself from God's love. He will never stop loving you.
So, if you want to be close to God, how do you move towards him? Where do you even start? What does it mean to take a step towards God? Think of a friend you have whom you haven't seen in a while. How would you reconnect with that person? Well, the best way to reconnect with a friend is usually by starting a conversation, right? A chat, an instant message, a text, or a conversation at school. Do the same with God. Open your heart, open your mouth, start talking to him.
Now, think about your friends again. Here's the deal. Once you've reached non-stalker status with someone and you've struck up a friendly conversation, an invite is usually next, right? Like an invitation to hang out and spend time together. And the same is true of God. Spend time with him. There are no special prayers or rituals you have to do or memorize. Simply invite him back into your life.
Then talk with God like you would talk with a close friend. Invite him back into the details of your life. Remember, he hasn't gone anywhere. He's been with you the whole time. You may have taken a few steps away from the campfire, and it may happen again someday, but here's what I want you to remember. At any moment in your life, no matter how far from God you feel, you can always turn around and walk right back to the fire. God never moves. He never leaves. He is always there waiting for you. He will never stop loving you. He knows you better than you know yourself. And he has a story to tell in and through you.
One Sunday, I couldn't avoid the church situation. My mom said, "You're going." So I went and ended up meeting some kids there that were crazy nice, like unicorns in a forest. I was pretty sure these people were not real, but they were, and they invited me to come again. So I did, and after a few visits, I started to feel more safe. Safe enough to accept an invitation to join them at summer camp, where for the first time I was able to get close to God. Close enough to see that God loved me so much and that nothing I did or didn't do could ever change that truth.
Remember, your seat is right here around the campfire with a s'more in your hand. God is always close. No matter how far away you've walked, no matter how far away God feels, it only takes one step towards God to get right back to the fire. If you draw close to God, he will draw close to you.